In the third chapter of Philosophical Fragments, titled The Absolute Paradox, a Metaphysical Crochet, Kierkegaard puts forth the paradox in these words. In spite of the fact that Socrates studied with all diligence to acquire a knowledge of human nature and to understand himself, and in spite of the fame accorded him through the centuries as one who beyond all other men had an insight into the human heart, he has himself admitted that the reason for his shrinking from reflection upon the nature of such beings as Pegasus and the Gorgons was that he, the lifelong student of human nature, had not yet been able to make up his mind whether he was a stranger, monster, than Typhon, or a creature of a gentler and simpler sort, partaking of something divine. This seems to be a paradox. What is this paradox? Kierkegaard says the paradox is the passion of thought, and the thinker without the paradox is like the lover without passion, a mediocre fellow. But the ultimate potentiation of every passion is always to will its own downfall, and so it is also the ultimate passion of the understanding to will the collision, although in one way or another the collision must become its downfall. This, then, is the ultimate paradox of thought, to want to discover something that thought itself cannot think. What is this willing its downfall? Kierkegaard asserts that the ultimate paradox of thought is to want to discover something that thought itself cannot think. Examples of these can be, in the Platonic sense, the one that is beyond being, beyond the ideas or forms, and in the Cartesian world, the I that is unimaginable, or in the view of Kant, the thing in itself that is inherently unknowable. Why this passion? What is driving them to it? To get started, Kierkegaard assumes that we know what a human being is. This means that we know who we are. But then the paradox sets to work. The paradox of the understanding reacts upon a person and upon his self-knowledge in such a way that he who believed that he knew himself now no longer is sure. Like Socrates, he doesn't know if he is Typhon or some other animal. The problem here is of self-reference. Can we avoid this self-reflexivity when we think the ultimate thing, the thing that is also our condition, the condition of our investigating it? If not, we will fall into paradox. Suppose the ultimate thing we want to think is the God. Does the God exist? Can I demonstrate his existence? As Kierkegaard says, if namely the God does not exist, then of course it is impossible to demonstrate it. But if it does exist, then it is foolishness to want to demonstrate it. Kierkegaard's answer is that I must take this existence as decided, because otherwise I would not begin, easily perceiving that the whole thing would be impossible if it did not exist. In other words, we are always assuming existence in wanting to demonstrate it. There is no separation between the condition and the conditioned here. Existence per se does not allow itself to be split. Thus, suppose I say that I want to demonstrate that the unknown which exists is the God. Here I demonstrate nothing, least of all an existence, but I develop the definition of a concept, namely the concept of the existing unknown. The general claim here is that I never reason in conclusion to existence, but I reason in conclusion from existence. For example, I do not demonstrate that a stone exists, but that something which exists is a stone. The court of law does not demonstrate that a criminal exists, but that the accused, who does exist, is a criminal. Suppose, for example, I want to prove that Napoleon exists. I reason from Napoleon's works to Napoleon's existence. Now, either in speaking about Napoleon's works, I assume already that there is a Napoleon, or I demonstrate purely ideally that such works are the works of a great general, etc. What is going on here? One way to think of Kierkegaard's point is Aristotle's assertion that the individual existence cannot be defined, existence not being a predicate and hence not entering into its definition. The individual can only be directly seen. Since it cannot be defined, we cannot reason to it. Kierkegaard continues that Napoleon's works do not prove his existence but demonstrate generalship. In other words, he is not absolutely related to his works, but God is. However, his works are not easily identified. He says, God's works, therefore, only the God can do. Quite correct. But then, what are the God's works? The works from which I want to demonstrate his existence do not immediately and directly exist, not at all. Therefore, from what works do I demonstrate it? From the works regarded ideally, that is, as they do not appear directly and immediately. In order to assist the demonstration, Kierkegaard proposes several things. First, we must let go of the demonstration to help it, realizing that we cannot prove the existence of God. He says, so long as I am holding on to the demonstration, that is, continue to be one who is demonstrating, the existence does not emerge, if for no other reason than that I am in the process of demonstrating it. But when I let go of the demonstration, the existence is there. Therefore, anyone who wants to demonstrate the existence of God proves something else instead, at times something that perhaps did not even need demonstrating. Next, he says, we must posit the leap, and in doing this, we must shun a mere amassing of arguments. Kierkegaard's leap is a qualitative leap of faith. This is not a blind leap, as is often thought. Kierkegaard's concern was that faith is never easy or probable. It is often a fearful struggle to cast one's entire person into relation to God. There is no gradual accumulation of sensory data or rational proofs for God's existence. One performs a willed act of faith despite fear, doubt, and sin. The leap is not out of thoughtlessness, but out of volition. The leap is sheer and unmediated and is not made by quantitative movements, stages, or changes. It cannot be mediated by proofs or reason. It is a sheer leap from doubt, or more specifically, from the doubt that exists by virtue of the paradoxical. Kierkegaard says that the existence of God must be presupposed if we are to have meaningful discourse about deity. Again, this measure does not in any way pass for a proof. This is because God is the unknown. Next, he steps beyond the epistemological dilemma of the division of thinking and being by positing sin. Given the understanding confuses itself with the different, it cannot know the God by itself. Thus, just to come to know that the God is the different, man needs the God. The God must show man that he is in untruth, has not the condition for knowing, and is in sin. He says, what then is the difference? Indeed, what else but sin, since the difference, the absolute difference, must have been caused by the individual himself. Thus, the paradox becomes even more terrible, or the same paradox has the duplexity by which it manifests itself as the absolute, negatively by bringing into prominence the absolute difference of sin, and positively by wanting to annul this absolute difference in the absolute equality. Thus, the epistemological problem is also an existential and dogmatic issue, which returns us to the subjective issue of cognition, which Plato approached with his theory of recollection, wherein all knowledge is already at hand and simply needs a human teacher to extract it. Kierkegaard substitutes the God teacher for the human teacher, but sin interferes with the teaching process. The Socratic process excluded volition. The answer to ignorance was knowledge, which resides in each man, needing only the prompting of the teacher. But the Christian process includes a limited volition. The answer to ignorance is for the God to remove the sin. The Socratic view of ignorance discounted the role of volition. If a man knows the truth, he will do it. If a man does wrong, it is because of ignorance. Kierkegaard extends this ignorance to include the function of will and the concept of sin. Our sin actually brings about the downfall of our understanding, so that we, like our counterparts under the Platonic system, are truly ignorant until the teacher comes.